Good afternoon, everyone. We will be starting the session in a couple of minutes. We're just waiting for people to log in. I see that people are still logging in. Everybody who is already on the call, while we wait for the others to join, I thought it'll be interesting if we do a short poll. We'll understand your expectations a lot better. So what I'll do now is I'll just join whoever is already joined into the meeting. I'll just launch a poll. Please do vote. We just want to try to understand the level of automation of your sourcing and procurement function. We have 4 options. Request you to please vote. I have launched the poll. I hope you can see the poll. Yeah, thank you. I can see that people have started to vote. Those who have just joined in, I can see quite a few people just joined in. I would request you just to take this quick poll. We're just trying to understand the level of automation in your sourcing and procurement function. Thank you. And this is very interesting. Suresh and Shri, I think for you also, I think this will be an interesting thing to note. 43% of the people have felt that this is, they know their systems are fully manual, and another 43 feel it's partially automated, and 14% feel that it is automated already. So that's very interesting. Thank you, everyone. And a warm welcome, good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to all of you to today's session on strategic sourcing and procurement automation for Epicor ERP. We all know and we all understand that ERP systems are absolutely critical for achieving business process efficiency, automation, and transactional automation across different functions within an organization, improving coordination and collaboration between different business functions. That's one of the key advantages of an ERP. We absolutely understand that. You bring everybody onto the one single platform, and it excels in core process automation. Absolutely no doubt about that. However, there are some specific areas where a deeper automation and a more specific solution can make a huge difference between where you're today to where you're going. Especially in sourcing and procurement, there has been a very, very deep impact over the last 2 years because of the pandemic, and in the recent past, the war in Europe have all combined to disrupt supply chains like never before. This has resulted in a lot of dependency on very, very close collaboration with suppliers, constant eye on the supply chain to make sure that you're not getting disrupted. In the context of this, we thought it will be a great opportunity for us to talk a little bit more about how we can help with our MeRLIN solution to digitize and automate your sourcing and procurement function, move it from transactional to more strategic, and get long-term benefits. Yep. So thank you, and a warm welcome once again to everyone. And I will just start with a quick round of introductions. Those who participated in the poll, a big thank you once again. My name is Kumar Malampalli. I am a partner and co-founder at Ryan. Over the last 3 decades, I have done a huge amount of IT solutioning, IT programs and projects across the world. With a large focus on manufacturing sector as well as in airline sector. I am passionate about IT solutions, especially which are business-facing solutions, and it gives me great pleasure to be here today to talk to 2 absolute experts in this area, both of whom have worked extensively in both these solutions. So I'm extremely happy to welcome Suresh. Suresh is our CTO. Suresh has deep expertise both in Epicor as a solution architect with decades of experience, as well as in conceptualizing and developing the MeRLIN product for us. So he understands both sides of the story extremely well. He has been on the ground and done lots of implementation successfully and demonstrated huge amount of technical leadership. Warm welcome, Suresh, and good to have you once again chatting with you after, I think, a long time we are together in a webinar.
Thank you, Kumar, and good afternoon to all of you, actually. Yeah, thank you.
And Srikanth Gaurav, we all know him as Sri. Sri has again huge expertise and experience in implementing business solutions globally across 20 countries. He's done over 2 decades, large and small, very very complex projects involving business process reengineering, business transformation, as well as heading a professional service business unit. He comes with deep expertise in program and project management, and of course, a lot of understanding of Epicor ERP as well. So this gives us a unique advantage of bringing to you a more holistic story across what we are talking about today. Shri, a warm welcome and good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Kumar, and my pleasure and privilege to be here and speaking to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me quickly jump into the topic of the day, right? We've been speaking a lot about how supply chains are getting disrupted and the challenges we are facing. And Shri, I'd like to put across this first question to you. Last 2 years or 2.5 years have been really tough for any business in the world. And the goalposts have shifted in terms of supply chain. So how do you think the technology landscape, especially digitization of procurement and supply chain, has changed post pandemic? And if you could just add a flavor of how it will help Epicor users, that would be great.
Thank you, Kumar. I'll set the stage today with that. I think it's the right stage to speak about, the right starting point, because what's happened in the last 24 months or so, all of us have immensely suffered and felt the impact of the pandemic. And just not us as personally, our families, but also businesses as well. Now, when you put it in the context of business, it's more around supply chain. That is where it has got impacted. Several businesses suffered for lack of resilience and the lack of an ability to manage the supply chain risk. And it's in today, while we are witnessing an unfortunate war in Europe, it's even more, right? What we read about food grain shortage and how it's affecting economies around the world, more and more is a necessity to be able to manage supply chain. And the answer to be able to do so is through digitization. And during pandemic as well, it became clear that the companies that suffered, corporations that suffered the least impact were the ones who had already switched or adapted to a digitized method of doing business, irrespective of where it is, right, in terms of it. So much so that the impact of this on the economies has been that soon we should expect a legislation, in fact, coming up in Europe, that mandates companies to have digitized their supply chain. So that's so much of so. Now, whether it's legislation or not, I think at a company's level, it's just common sense that we're able to ride the bandwagon of technology and try to digitize this particular process and manage this. Now, while you do this, in pandemic or not, you end up, of course, the obvious benefits of process optimization, efficiency, and so on and so on. But the shift is towards just not that, but the shift is towards managing business risk. And that is where Epicor customers would tend to benefit with having such a platform to be able to do so. Now, various studies also in the public domain that kind of demonstrate this and re-emphasize this particular topic. In fact, a study, I think it was done by Pricewaterhouse, where they did a global survey on procurement leadership. They wanted the benchmark set is around 72% of the entire value chain and supply chain to be digitized. That's a very tall order, because when you take even a robust, well-implemented ERP platform, such as several of our customers here, the amount of digitization that you can manage in the supply chain is around 30-40%. So that's a big jump, even with a well-implemented ERP. So that is the shift that has the pandemic has brought. It has brought a sense of urgency to be able to manage this. But here, what is the context here is, right? The context is use this particular opportunity to create a wholesome transformation in your supply chain. Now, you already have a good ERP, robust ERP such as Epicor that's running your business, but still, why and what does this mean? Despite that, what it means is management of supply chain, especially on sourcing and procurement, involves a myriad of applications, despite a robust ERP system. It could mean a vendor management portal for managing your vendor relationships, perhaps Excel predominantly managing your tenders and comparisons of RFQs. Emails predominantly, there's an email malaise in terms of how information is scattered across. And there's a necessity to put all this together. The consequence, if you don't do this, is a lack of end-to-end single platform, numerous silos of information, lack of cohesive information, and most importantly, a dramatic reduction in how companies can manage their supply chain. And that is where the value comes in, is in terms of how do we put all this together into a single platform for businesses to manage supply chain. That is where MeRLIN comes in, and it's kind of a necessity that was a focus is brought into it by the pandemic and what we're seeing today economically that's affecting businesses.
Yep, absolutely valid, Shri, and kind of logically it takes me to the next question. Suresh, Shri is saying that it's almost like doubling the level of automation even in a fairly robustly automated situation, and in some other cases maybe even more if we are mostly relying on emails and Excel sheets, then there is quite a lot that can be done, right? So in this context, if we keep hearing this, we have our ERP works great, so why should we be automating sourcing and procurement? So could you just give some context on this as well?
Oh, definitely, Kumar. And if I take it from where Sri left, right, and you look at it, he was talking about around 72% non-digitalized procurement users actually when it comes to the general industry, right? Because this has got nothing to do with Epicor as an ERP. This is generally across all ERP systems. So for me to start with, this is not a problem what Epicor as a product, it is across all the ERP. That's number one. Number two is, if you look at the survey what we have launched, Kumar, 5 minutes ago, it was showing non-automated as well as partially automated, the summing up to around 86%, right? And that's not too different from the 72% what you have talked about, right? So in summary, what we are saying is, there's a huge room for improvement, irrespective of what ERP you are using. And that is where that white space is there in the market today, right? And if I pick up a couple of words, what Sri was talking about, compliance, digitization, right? Visibility, risk, and so on and so forth. This is a words which we keep on using in every discussion, right? And the reality is, the organizations, it is not easy for people to come over this or come out of this kind of problems unless and until you have a proper tool. And ERP as such is meant for automating our core processes, whether it is you talk about finance, we talk about your sales, and when we talk about your manufacturing process, your supply chain process, so on and so forth. Yeah, they're all doing a great job actually. Yeah, we all know that actually there is a clear return on investment and people are getting really benefited out of it. You get a control over the business. But as Sri said, we also have seen those companies who had invested heavily in the e-commerce side were the ones who really took advantage during the pandemic, right? And the similar way, that is the time when people realize the importance of digitization in the procurement side of the business, right? And most of the ERP, if you look at it, they are all good when it comes to, hey, I know what is to be bought, and having purchase orders, receiving quality, probably invoicing, and all these areas, they are pretty good, and including payments, right? And that is all being taken care even today through the systems. But when you look at, there are many steps before that actually. Raising the purchase order is probably one of the last steps actually in the whole sourcing process, right? How do you identify the right suppliers actually from the market, right? And what is the process in terms of onboarding them? From a compliance perspective, what documents are required, right? What kind of information you have to collect? From a risk perspective, actually, what kind of risk they have, especially in form of financial risk, supply chain risk, logistics risk, so on and so forth, right? And how do we onboard them? Today, probably, as Sri said, it's a couple of emails and sending a spreadsheet. They are sending some emails. They are sending some attachment. Somebody in our side, the buyer side, sit and create all these things into the system, create straight away a purchase order, move on with that. Until that, it's all in emails, actually. If the person tomorrow asks a question, oh, why did you choose this supplier? Why not the other one? the answer is basically I have to go and search in my email actually, right? That's where it is. And probably it is not easy. So it is also not, we are not going through that stringent process when it comes to the compliance. That's key today, right? Now, that is one area which is completely non-automated. And naturally, what happens is basically those informations are something the buyers are entering. There is no provision for supplier to enter it, supplier to keep it up to date, supplier to keep collaborating with you. This is a completely one area which is kept outside the ERP system in most of the cases. Number two, the entire tendering process, right? Today, as we know, most of the companies, if you ask, hey, how do you purchase it? Hey, I will go and search across 5 suppliers and look at which one is offering the best price. I go and buy against them, right? But the challenge is basically there is no visibility in terms of price-wise. Maybe the one who's offering the best may not be the best for us to in a business continuity perspective, right? Is he supplying on time? Is he supplying in full? What is the quality? How much capacity he has got? What kind of risk he has got? Is it a reliable supplier for long term, right? These are all the questions which people kept on asking day in and day out. And most of the cases, we don't have an answer, right? So the whole tendering process to be automated is another big challenge. When I say tendering process, it could be in the form of an RFI, probably an RFQ or e-auction, right? All these different tendering methods, actually, it is all done through spreadsheets today, rather than getting it done through a proper system where the vendors get visibility and they collaborate with us and they fill in those information. They submit those responses. Then somebody sitting from the buyer's side to review and look at who is the best vendor, and not only from a price perspective, from a value perspective. And the value is driven based on multiple parameters, right? And then why do we choose a particular supplier? And again, providing visibility to the stakeholders who in turn approve those selection, right? The buyers is just doing a selection, but it has to be approved by someone else. Probably looking at different parameters and different attributes, right? That process is not very easy. And again, when we talk about tendering, it is not a very easy process, right? Especially some of our customers, they do very complex business when it comes to, I need to do a technical evaluation from the proposal, what is being submitted by vendors. And then somebody else will do a commercial evaluation, because unless it is technically qualified, there's no point in me choosing that supplier, right? So it can be very complex, actually. And that is not something which any ERP does today, right? And that is something which MeRLIN can do and MeRLIN can help. Now, go one step further. We have decided to choose a supplier and everybody is happy with it. Now we get into the contracting phase, right? Now, a contract is not something, I have a standard contract, I send it to the supplier as it is accepted, right? One is terms and conditions, actually, but many of these cases, when we have a service procurement, when we have certain specific material, which is not a standard off-the-shelf product, actually, when we are buying it, there is definitely a contract discussion happens, and that also we may have a standard contract template. And then people typically open it in a Word, track changes, and finally we have a document. When it takes to someone for approval, the question he is going to ask is basically, what are all the deviation from the standard contract? It's all gone, right? Because I will kind of either I will open the track changes and look at everything what is being done, and I don't expect a CEO, CFO to sit and read through a 50-page document once again, right? And look at the amount of time they are wasting in terms of doing that. But if it is done through the system like MeRLIN, anytime anybody can go and look at actually what are all the deviation. It gives them list of items which is a deviation from the standard contract, as well as the supplier collaborate and work with the supplier straight away go and say that actually, oh, this is what I have an issue. And finally, we take all these things and final contract document is there, electronically signed and activated thereafter, right? So the entire process, typically, if it takes, let's say that actually 50 hours, we are saying it is all going to be cut down to probably 5 hours, 6 hours, and so on and so forth. The amount of review what we have to do is very minimum compared to the regular thing what we do. And that is another important aspect what we need to look at it, right? So all other items like the collaboration capability, real-time information, visibility, analytics, and all of the things, you leave it as a kind of a bonus, right? Even if you address these couple of key important item itself, the kind of savings and benefits what you're going to get is basically huge. And so in summary, as I said earlier, this has got nothing to do with Epicor as an ERP alone. This is across the industry. Every ERP has got kind of this area which is not addressed from a procurement perspective. That is where MeRLIN can add value, and MeRLIN will help people to automate these processes in terms of managing their end-to-end procurement, especially from a source to procure perspective. As I said, procure to pay, probably it is a sweet spot in most of the ERP, and they will take care of it. But before the sourcing to procure, including supplier onboarding, contracting, enabling collaboration, that is one area which is a white space. That is exactly what MeRLIN does. That is where the value add you are going to get by having a product like MeRLIN.
Sure, absolutely, Suresh. So just to summarize very briefly, you're talking about supplier onboarding and lifecycle management. You're talking about managing the entire tendering process. You're talking about contracting automation. And of course, so many other things, probably we can see during the demo as well. You can give a quick flavor of everything. So there's so much more to it than what is there in an ERP. Thank you so much. Shri, we now understand, right? There is a need, and then we also understand what we are actually trying to digitize, but that logically leads to the next question, right? What is the ROI for doing something like this? It's again a fairly big commitment, right? To take up another initiative and then digitize a lot of business processes and so on. So can you just talk a little bit about that?
I mean, absolutely, Kumar, on that topic, Suresh, I saw your enthusiasm in terms of the opportunity it creates for Epicor customers in moving to MeRLIN. And that brings to the ROI. And ROI as well, the opportunity is so huge that there are two different contexts to the ROI as well. I mean, that is what is so unique here. One is, of course, the ROI in terms of the money and the time in where you're investing, is it worth it, and so on. You will see in a few minutes that it just becomes obvious. The other big shift that MeRLIN will bring to Epicor customers is that it will drive and convert your sourcing function or a procurement department into a strategic arm of the business. So what is considered as an overhead, or what's considered as an administrative team that is required to support business operations, will be able to strategically contribute to the business. That is where the real ROI comes in. Now, how do you do that? Is several things that Suresh mentioned is to enable for Epicor customers to be able to behave strategically in sourcing, category-based sourcing, supplier management and collaboration, right? Sourcing logistics, external compliance, and so on, right? So bringing in the whole strategic shift into procurement and making procurement functions as just not an overhead department, but to be able to drive bottom line. That's where the ROI comes in. Now, I've got two interesting examples. We did this a study on ROI study and two very interesting customers. One, very large, very well established, running Epicor ERP for more than a decade, very well implemented, very diverse. If you look at the entire sourcing landscape as a process, you have the requisitions that happens on Epicor, you have the entire warehousing and inventory management, and of course, purchase orders in the AP. But as I said earlier, there are these small missing steps that are missing out there, right? Vendor management. Of course, they had a good vendor management and registration platform as well. But the real driver and ROI that the company wanted to do is they wanted to reduce dramatically unplanned spending. How do you do that with the traditional ERP, right? They wanted to drive catalog-based purchasing. For a business of this volume, just to put a context of around $150 million in terms of annual spend, around 18 to 20 buyers, around 30 approvers managing this particular cycle. So the ROI wasn't able to eliminate these steps. I'll come to the articulation of the numbers in a second. The other example, another Epicor customer using ERP almost similar time, 8 to 10 years, well implemented in both the cases. They were lacking a supplier collaboration tool that happens externally by emails, RFQ process tendering, Suresh, everything that he said, again, sourcing, negotiating. These are all on email, on Excel, and things like that. The same case study exactly. From a context standpoint, around $75 million in terms of average buying spend. And their driver was consolidate, because they're more into manufacturing, consolidate your buying against a few preferred suppliers and drive cost saving, give better negotiating advantage, and so on and so on. Buyers can negotiate better. The ROI, when it comes to these two, of course, is the obvious ones that you're digitizing everything. It's better than writing by paper, of course, right? For sure, or by writing emails and so on. Then number one is digitization. Number two is the productivity increase that brings upon this. In the studies that we did, at least 65% increase in digitization. When I say digitization, Excel is not considered digital or email is not considered digital, right? And so on. That is the quantum increase. If you quantify that by cost to company of people employed in this kind of a volume business, it's 120% increase in productivity in the value chain. Now, if you go to the main drivers that these corporations were looking for, the quantified productivity savings, if you take $100 million as a procurement spend as a benchmark, is around $11.4 million. That's almost 11% there itself, right? One of the key drivers was to how do you bring in everything controlled spending rather than emergency maverick spending. Even a 5% reduction was putting onto the table another incremental $6 million on the table in terms of saving. So all in all, if you put all this together, if you take $100 million as your procurement spend in a year, the saving itself was a whooping around $13 to $14 million that could almost be assured. That's a 12 to 13% saving into bottom line that procurement as a function can provide. And now if you take that, put it in the context of ROI of what you would invest in a project such as this, your recovery is probably within months. By the time you start the project, you're already starting to recover it. And by the time you finish the project, you already have recovered it. It kind of makes the decision becomes such an obvious decision when you put that into a context of ROI. That's been our studies, and we articulate this as well with our scientific approach to be able to articulate this value.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Sri. And there are so many intangibles, right? Like compliance, cost of compliance. You have people, what if you end up with a compliance issue, then cost of fixing that. All that is not even accounted for, right? There are so many obvious benefits that these are all bonuses on top of that.
I mean, very interesting there. I forgot to mention this in one of these customers. One of the key drivers was compliance, because they were dealing with hazardous goods and with customers were of national interest to a country. So there's a lot of what they do is regulated by compliance, right? Yep. Adhering to a certain process is key from a supply chain standpoint, and that's huge to be able to do this manually, and that's where the value comes up.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So that brings me to a rather interesting technical point, Suresh. We kind of now have seen the business and functional aspect of why this solution is needed and how it can benefit us. However, the question in the back of any person who is going to be involved in an initiative like this is, how smoothly can I integrate it with my existing systems? Is it going to be seamless, or am I going to be needing to do a lot of screwdriver technology? This question is an obvious question. It will come up. So, if you could just throw some light on this.
Oh, sure, Kumar. Before that, actually, probably Sri, you are putting a big number on the table, right? For 100 million purchase, you are saying 16 to 17 million savings. For me, actually, my EBITDA in the business is not hardly 10%, 11%, right? So what you're saying is basically, if I want to grow my business by another $100 million, the amount of effort it takes, as well as the cost what I have to incur, right? Rather, better I will stop thinking about the growth. And I will bring in efficiency and improvement and adoption of strategic procurement, or a product like MeRLIN will straight away add 16 to 17% to my bottom line, right? So the entire philosophy in the organization is you're asking me to change it. Rather than looking at growth, you're asking me to look at productivity and efficiency, isn't it?
Absolutely, Suresh. It's kind of surprising, isn't it? So when we did the study, not only was it surprising to me, it was kind of shocking as well. It's a paradigm shift. Now we are talking about growth. We are talking about growth in EBITDA, right? How can you bring growth in profitability? Yes, these are the enabling platforms that brings that. And I call this as the tool that we used for these studies is called as an economic impact calculator tool that we can bring to these customers as well on this call. Clearly, it's almost a guarantee, in my opinion, that's the saving that you can drive with a platform such as this.
That's good to hear, and I'm sure all of our customers will make use of this tool and start leveraging from that. To answer your question, Kumar, from an integration perspective, MeRLIN is totally integrated bidirectionally with the ERP, right? The moment you decide to deploy MeRLIN and it is deployed, it will fetch all the necessary information from Epicor and bring it to MeRLIN. And thereafter, you can pretty much decide which one to act as a master, which one to act as a slave. Probably the entire supplier onboarding is going to happen through MeRLIN. Thereafter, automatically that will update the suppliers in ERP, that's in Epicor. And the moment you make some changes in the ERP, that will in turn come back to MeRLIN as well. From a part master perspective, catalog perspective, that will definitely come from ERP because that is going to be the master. And there are many other touch points when it comes to integration. And the integration is not limited just for masters. It is also for transactions, right? Many of our customers will decide, hey, I will have the POs to be created in ERP. That's well and good, right? ERP is good for that. So naturally, what happens is basically the purchase order will appear in MeRLIN real time. And what it does is basically, if you update the purchase order status, because this is one of the key challenges today, right? We typically call it expediting in the industry. Like I have created a purchase order for a long lead item. The delivery takes around 4 months, 5 months. Now, what's the update in between that? If there is a delay, if there is a factory shutdown, if there is a local geographical issue, then how am I going to get update from my vendor in terms of, are we on track? Are we going to get delivery on track? Because we may have a back-to-back commitment to our customer. We may have planned something for production in our organization. So the update is key, actually. So that is going to work through the collaborative platform in MeRLIN. So for that, actually, we may have to update purchase order in MeRLIN. The invoice, maybe the supplier will upload it through MeRLIN, actually. That in turn can be interfaced with the ERP, right? So we have a supplier facing portal. So that will act as one window for the supplier to update and collaborate with the buyer. And buyer have one window, which is the window and the door for the buyer to collaborate and work with the supplier, right? So in summary, what happens is basically both these solutions are integrated bidirectionally and the information will flow seamlessly. And there is nothing to worry from an information silo perspective, which is what we are trying to avoid anyway.
Yep, absolutely. So I think the bottom line is single source of truth for all procurement data, masters, transactions, bidirectional. Yeah, so
that's correct.
Absolutely. Yeah, fantastic. So I know everybody is eager to look at the tool and they are quite keen to see this, but I just thought we'll take just a minute to capture your major challenges. If you don't mind, I'd like to run another quick poll. This will give Suresh the context, and then I will hand over to Suresh to give you a demo of MeRLIN. So good. So I will just quickly flash the results, Suresh, just and then I'll just hand over the session to you. Managing different types of spend and stakeholder collaboration seems to be a big pain point. And then spend visibility is the next big pain point, of course. And then user adoption, I think that's a more of a project management topic. So we'll probably come back to that. But this is what everyone is saying. Thank you. And I will actually hand over the control to you, Suresh, if you could take over from here.
Thanks, Kumar. And I think the poll result is not different from what we have expected anyway, right? Kind of this is pretty much in line with what industry standards and what people are talking about, right? So what I will do is basically definitely I'm going to talk about MeRLIN and I will showcase MeRLIN in this particular case. Okay. Now you can see pretty much a login screen, and this is, as I said earlier, a completely configurable from a theming styling perspective. You can decide and let's say bring the corporate theme and style of your organization. And MeRLIN can be accessed either through a browser. It is a browser independent solution, so you can pick and choose whatever browsers you want to use it. And you can also pretty much have it on your mobile device in terms of approving it, requesting it, so on and so forth, actually. And this is the landing page. Again, it's completely configurable landing page. You have the capability in terms of manually defining each one of you what you would like to see. And you also get to see that actually the complete collaboration notification section, notifications are highly configurable. You will be able to decide what kind of notifications needs to be published, and either in a mobile or in a screen itself, you can click on it. This is directly, you can navigate from here to the respective transactions. You can see what are all the things waiting for approvals. You can see all approval things. You can do it from here. You can see these are all the transactions I need to approve it, and straight away you have an ability to approve it. You can also go and look at different screens, different approval requests in terms of doing it. You also get to see that actually there is a collaboration capability. When you create a tender or when you a supplier onboarding request, you can pretty much go here and say real-time supplier can ask questions, and you can answer whatever question answer which is happening here will be made visible to every vendor. So you're not do an undue favor to a specific vendor, right? So all informations are made visible to everybody. And on top of it, what it does is basically you can also define your own corporate hierarchy. If it is a multi-company setup, each company may want to restrict their own requisitions and their own suppliers, you can do that. Or you can pretty much decide actually, no, it is centralized procurement is what I want to do. That is also possible, right? Now, the other thing is basically, as I said earlier, it's completely bilingual. You can pretty much decide what kind of language you want to use it. Either is Arabic, English, German, Chinese, Spanish. You can pretty much do that. Now, here you get to see that actually there is a target saving and actual saving. This is exactly what Sri was talking about earlier in terms of setting up savings target to each and every buyer and measuring them against their saving target, transforming the entire cost center to more of a profit center as far as the procurement is concerned. Now, we may want to look at actually how much are we saving on each and every category, subcategory. That is something we have the ability to do and see. You also see that actually each and every process when it comes to the system, how much is the standard turnaround time and actually how long it is being taken, right? So this is based on your transactions in the system. If you say a purchase order should not take right from creation to approval and sending out to a supplier, it should not take more than 35 hours. System is showing it actually take 3 hours. It's very quick. Now, where we see is basically from a CPO's perspective or a CFO's perspective or CEO's perspective, where is the bottleneck? What needs to be done in terms of improvising it is what you can see here. You can straight away jump into action, right? And here also it is talking about how much do we spend over a period of time, how much is each payment term-wise spend, right? These are all information which is adding to the savings. Now, we have more purchase orders on a 0 days payment term. That is good, not good for the working capital. That's not good for the company cash flow, right? So this is straight away giving me visibility into what I should do as far as each and every supplier and purchase order and their payment term perspective. Here it is talking about why do I take decision in favor of a particular supplier. You can see mostly it is delivery time, right? So why don't I may be compromising on the price because of the delivery time. So why not having more suppliers and diversified base? So probably the delivery time can be reduced. Thereby I can focus more on the price or quality, right? These are all informations which is going to throw. Earlier, she said, now, how do I eliminate my maverick spend? The more and more I have the contract and sticking to the contract, buying against the contract will help me to have a better price, better compliance, and better delivery time. So the more I buying, doing a maverick spend without contract is leading to higher price as well as lower quality probably. Now, it is also showing where do I source it from, which location it is being done. In case of an issue in a specific location, I know what impact it's going to make as far as my business is concerned. How many suppliers are supplying on time in full? How my supplier is diversified across multiple regions. This is an interesting 9-box analysis where it's talking about each and every supplier and it's plotted on a 9-box. And what it does is, in this particular case, you can see the supplier rating is not great. The supplier is rated only 20. Either all the suppliers are rated on a scale of 0 to 100 dynamically based on multiple attributes like on-time delivery, price, quality, capacity, so on and so forth. So if the supplier is rated bad and we are spending close to 8 million, system is suggesting stop it immediately, because you have an alternative supplier. Go and spend with that supplier. Actually, that is what we should do. You should not be spending with a supplier who are rated bad. And you can also see that actually, if there is a supplier who is rated bad and there is a higher spend, system is saying investigate. There can be some compliance issue, right? So the CPO, CEO and CFO will get a clear picture in terms of what is wrong, what we need to focus on, and so forth. You also get to see that actually my sourcing information, these are all informations you can directly navigate from here to the respective transactions. You can see these are all drill down enabled. My supplier information, my reminders, my actions, my supply, order supply information, all these different things you can see. And the beauty is basically this will pretty much give you the capability of you to go and define something from the scratch as well. Now, I can, as I said, this is completely configurable. I may probably go into define my own dashboard. I can go and say that actually I want to delete all these existing ones. Probably I will go and create something from the scratch by bringing amount here, suppliers here, buyers here, parts. You go and say that actually it is category area. Then you probably go and say that actually, okay, I want to get my spend by buyer. Then I want to get my spend by Incoterm. So you keep defining your own analytics, and what you get to see is basically this also can have your own filters actually here. You can see only these buyers I want to look at it, only these categories I want to look at it. I want to probably go and look at the time frame. So all these things are done, and you have it information here. You can keep drilling down into the details. All these different flexibilities are something what we offer in the system. So you go and define your own dashboards at any given point in time. So some users might come and say, I want to have more detailed analytics actually. We have option for them as well. I will go and look at my purchase measures like total amount being purchased. I will go and say that actually, okay, total amount is fine. I also want to go and see that actually it is based on category. You will see that category wise total purchase. Now I will say, okay, what I want to also look at is basically number of purchase orders against that supplier. I can see that for that category. I will say this is, I want to see buyer wise to see that actually which buyer is creating more number of transactions. I have an ability to see that as well. And naturally, you can export this into different tools. You can bring in filters. You can say that actually I want to save this for future use, and all of the kind of things are done, can be done. You also have an ability to create your own reports and reusable report, personalized report. All these different capabilities are pretty much there in the system. Now, when you go and look at different functions, as I said, the supplier onboarding can be done in multiple ways. I can pretty much go and invite a supplier. I can say, this is the supplier name, this is the email address, send a registration form to them. The registration form is highly configurable. You can decide what kind of information to be captured and mandated by the from the vendor. You can also add attachment, especially your terms and conditions and compliance. You can pretty much send invitation, and you can also say that actually you can upload any document and templates as well. Now, as I said, the moment I send that, naturally the supplier will get an email, and they can directly click on the link, and it will ask for the basic registration. They can log into the supplier portal with a supplier email address and password, and they will be able to fill in all the relevant information as far as the supplier is concerned, as mandated by the vendor, right? By the buyer. So you have an ability in terms of sending all this information, and the moment the supplier get to see those information, they will be able to fill in all the information which is asked by the buyer. And we can see here, I can go and say the information, what is being captured. As I said earlier, this is completely configurable. You can take a decision what kind of information is to be mandated. You can see the supplier information, the categories which he supplies, address details, bank information, tax information, different location he can supply, document with expiry date like trade certificates and all of the kind of things actually, contacts, in case of any payments for them to get onboarded, you can do that as well. Now, what you also get to see is basically any supplier, once it is onboarded and approved, if the supplier wants to make any changes to their master data, they will have to request for a permission from the buyer. Then only it will be they will be able to modify the information. You can also see the other way to do that. Supplier can pretty much go and say that actually I'm interested to work with you, rather than the buyer sending an information link to you. You can show interest to work with the buyer. So what happens is basically if you go to the website of your customer, and you can pretty much say, I want to register with you, I want to work with you. That is something which you can do as well in the system. Now, if you go here, this is something which you are going to put in front of your, let's say, in the website. And the moment that is there in the website, each and every supplier can go and say, hey, I'm interested to work with you. These are all the categories I'm able to supply. These are all the services I'm going to supply. Then naturally what does is basically it will send that information to the buyer, and the buyer can take a call. You can see here, these are all the initial registration details. Once it is done, it will show you the interested suppliers, and you will be able to pretty much say whether I will accept that invitation or reject it, right? You can also see that actually the suppliers are onboarded, and any supplier who register their information will have to go through a complete approval process, and you see that actually the approval is being done by different people. If you want to deactivate a supplier, blacklist a supplier, extend a supplier, everything, there is a process around it, and you will be doing it. Now, you can also see that actually it's not really just supplier onboarding. It is also managing the entire life cycle of a supplier. You can pretty much see that actually in case the supplier requests for a payment term change, and it is not that you are changing from 90 to 60 days. It's all about what financial impact as an organization it is going to make to me, right? If I change from 90 to 60, how much money am I going to lose it, right? What kind of impact it's going to have on my working capital? Now you can see here in this particular case, it's changing from 90 to 120. And I'm saying, or considering my turnover, I will save $821, right, in a year. And if the turnover goes up, naturally my savings will be high. So any decision what you're taking on that front is basically completely based on facts and figures, rather than just going and changing payment terms. So as I said, the entire life cycle of a supplier can be managed. In this particular case, you see that actually supplier feedback surveys, right? And I can do feedback surveys, I can have questionnaire, I can get confirmation from the supplier and take a decision in terms of ranking them, right? You also get to see the complete category management, and you can see that actually the entire category can be defined, each category, who are all the preferred supplier, who are blacklisted suppliers, how much is their share of business to a country, region, all this different information, I can capture it. Now, you can have the budget here straight away, and the ERP budget will be brought into here, and you can again have more detailed budget maintained. You can have requisitions created either in ERP. If you make that in ERP, it will automatically come into MeRLIN. Or if you don't, otherwise the other option is basically you do that in MeRLIN itself. And all those RFQ requisition, what you're making is going to come here. And straight away, what you can do is, if there is a requirement and you don't have any contract, you can straight away go and select this and say, I want to create an RFQ or e-auction. I have both these options. The moment you create an RFQ, and system will show you that actually the entire RFQ here, and the RFQ, what kind of information you want to capture it. And you can see here, the RFQ, there are pretty much a lot of information where it asks you what kind of RFQ is it in which currency you expect a response, what is the due date, which template you want to use it. Based on the template, the kind of questions what you are asking could be different. The vendor need to fill up all these informations. How many responses allowed on an RFQ? Is it a sealed bid or open bid? How many evaluation you have it? Do you have a technical evaluation, commercial evaluation? Is it only based on invitation, or any supplier can participate? You can see what's the volume. You can see who are all the stakeholders in terms of taking that decision. Who is responsible for technical evaluation? Who is responsible for commercial evaluation? You can see the supplier, the RFQ details, which supplier I'm sending that RFQ. I can have attachments. Once all these things are done, I have an ability to publish this. The moment I publish, you will get to see that actually the suppliers can straight away respond to the RFQ, and we'll also see that actually that response can be directly submitted from there. I can go here, I can say that actually I want to respond to an RFQ. The moment I respond to it, you will get to see those informations are available. You can also go and say that actually I want to respond to these items. The moment I do that, system is asking based on the template, the kind of questions. In this particular case, it is a very simple template where it's asking what is the piece price, what is effective date, Incoterm, payment term, and attachments, so on and so forth. Now, what it also does is basically, I also have an ability to use a different template to make sure that actually the supplier is giving much more detail when it comes to my responses. And all these responses, once I have received, I have an ability to go and say, I want to do a decision directly in the system. So I will be able to evaluate it from here. I can say, oh, I want to look at all these things. Actually, let me see that these informations are made visible in this particular case, right? I will go and look at this. I will say that actually I want to do a commercial evaluation. Now, when you do that, you will get to see the supplier comparison side by side. I also have an ability to go and say, sort it based on the award amount or score. I have an ability. I can download this to a spreadsheet actually and say, all these decisions will be taken on the spreadsheet and later upload into the application. That is also possible. So the entire MeRLIN has got a real-time or kind of interface with Excel for people to take decisions. Actually, you can see I'm selecting this supplier for this and this supplier for the second item, and I can upload that into the details actually. And you also get to see, I can pretty much go here and say, this item I'm selecting this supplier, this item I'm selecting this supplier. Once all these things are there, I can pretty much go and say that actually I'm going to create an award package, and system is asking why you are awarding this. As soon as this award is created, you also get to see that actually there are award packages created, and award packages will show you which supplier you are going to award, what item, and what are all the terms and conditions you have agreed. And that terms and conditions you can see here, and send it for approval process. As soon as it is been approved, you will see that actually it is driving a contract or a purchase order. And you will also see that actually the entire contract management, including contract authoring capability. You also see purchase orders here, the entire expediting capability, receiving it. The supplier will do the shipment, I will receive it. And you also go and say that actually supplier is uploading the invoice, I'm receiving the invoice, I'm making the payment in my ERP system. Those payments are straight away updated to the supplier portal as well. So you have an ability in terms of managing the end-to-end source to procure, source to pay cycle in MeRLIN. But all these things, if you decide to the supplier to enter the invoice, upload the invoice in the portal, automatically this invoice will get interfaced with your ERP system, subject to an approval and acceptance by the buyer. If the shipment is done through the portal by the supplier, that shipment is automatically received as a GRN in the ERP system against the purchase order. If the purchase order is created in MeRLIN, that purchase order will appear in ERP, or if you are doing that in the ERP, that will appear in MeRLIN as well. Now, you have a lot of other capabilities from a business administration point of view in terms of setting up notification, email templates, alerts, FAQs. The entire system is configurable, and you have an ability to manage and configure the end-to-end capability within the system, and it will fill the white space gap what you have today in your business, and it will help you in terms of addressing that in MeRLIN. And looking at the time what I have in my hand, I think actually that's all what I wanted to showcase in this short demo, but we are more than happy to show you the end-to-end MeRLIN if any of you are interested. And I'm sure considering the offer what Sri put on table, there is a no-brainer and people will jump on it actually. Yeah, Sri, you are committed to delivering that number as well actually. Anyway, Kumar, back to you.
Yeah, so Suresh, can you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
There you go. So in the interest of time, since we have some audience questions, I will probably park this for now, since we have a few questions already come up from different people. I will just run a quick poll, and then while we are doing the poll, we can also answer the questions. Yeah. So let me just launch a poll, and we are trying to understand if what you saw today is of interest to you, and you would like to talk to us. So please vote. It will be very, very interesting to know whether you found this meaningful for you. Meanwhile, just a few quick questions while people are responding to the poll. I leave it there. Suresh, the first question is, we didn't get time to show auctions, so can we do different kind of configurations in auctions? That is one of the questions.
Kumar, the answer is yes, and MeRLIN supports the full-fledged e-auction capability, and you can do reverse auction and forward auction. Both are possible in the system. And as I said, it can be completely been answered through mobile devices as well. So there is an e-auction capability in MeRLIN as a built-in feature.
Absolutely. Shri, this is one interesting question. I think this one question we did not actually answer. So how long will it take to implement the solution?
Sure. I mean, very interesting, because it's also tied towards the ROI question statement, and to Suresh's earlier comments, how do we assure that ROI? You should expect a timeline of somewhere between 8 to 12 weeks, including all prep time required from the customer, and that's what should be the end-to-end time frame for MeRLIN implementation.
Absolutely. Okay. So it's not just that there is a huge ROI, but on top of that, there is also this accelerated implementation, which can help you get onboarded with this very, very quickly. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Suresh, I think you did indicate this answer briefly, but I just, someone is still not clear, I believe. What is the frequency of data flow between MeRLIN and Epicor? Is it scheduled or is it automatic? How does it work? For example, if I create a purchase order, how soon will I see it in Epicor?
It is real time. The moment you create a purchase order and approve it, that will immediately be seen in MeRLIN. And if you're doing it in MeRLIN, that will be immediately seen in Epicor as well. It is all been configured and done using RESTful APIs. It's completely secured, and that's been configurable as well.
Perfect. Okay. So we have just 1 minute to go, Shri. You have seen the demo. Suresh has, in the constraints that we had, given a very quick snapshot of the solution. Thanks, Suresh. In the 1 minute, if you could just summarize, what are the unique things? Why should we be looking at? One second, I'll just close this poll. Give me a second. And yeah, why should anyone look at this solution? Why MeRLIN?
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is a apt way to wrap this up, Kumar. Why MeRLIN is get rid of the various silos of information, manage multiple missing steps all into one platform for all the functionality that you would want it to be able to manage a supply chain, not in Epicor, including RFQ management, supplier management, expediting, collaboration with suppliers, and the analytics, and overall manage the supply chain risk, add incremental ROI, make procurement strategic, and do it very easily and very simply.
Yep.
In a month and a half, right?
Absolutely.
That's the tagline. Yeah.
So thank you so much, and thanks everybody. I hope you liked the session, and thanks also for voting. All the people who said we are interested, we will be in touch with you shortly. Have a good day and a good evening. Looking forward to seeing you all again. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone for participating. Yeah. Wish you a good day. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you.